Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 175 of the Terminal City FC podcast, part of the Area 51 Sports Network. Josh rejoined alongside Nathan Durek as per usual. He's back after a week away from Orlando.
Yeah.
Went,
Awesome
went to
trip.
Disney World.
Disney World, Universal Studios. Took my daughter, my wife. We all went together. Met up with some friends that live there, so we were able to have a place to crash, which is always nice. But the funny thing, our first day in Disney, we've been there for a few hours already, and we're standing in line for one of the rides, and not 5 people behind us is Christine Sinclair.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, she's just, with, a group of people doing her own thing, whatnot. So I'm not going to go up and say anything to her, but yeah, I kind of turn around, look, lean over to my, like, yeah, it's Christine Sinclair standing there. So it doesn't matter where I go. You can't get away. You can't get away from soccer, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the global game. You can't really get away from it. And you never know. You can run into Christine Sinclair anywhere.
Why not, right?
Let alone at Disney World. So,
yeah.
The Vancouver Whitecaps, let's face it, this was never going to last forever, the perfect record. And am I surprised they lost this game? No, given the circumstances, but it's not like they played horribly. It was just,
and also given how well Chicago's been doing.
And also, yeah, that too. Chicago ended up beating Vancouver 3-1 for Whitecaps' first loss of the season. And it was just a pretty tough start with Hugo Seifers, I think that's how you pronounce his name. 5 goals already for that guy, Golden Boot contender. He just gets behind Bjorn Inge Utvik and receives Philip Zinkernakel's pass and slots it past Joey Takolka. And you could argue Takolka should have challenged for the ball like a few seconds earlier.
I watched the highlights of this game, obviously, because I was away. But in this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Laborda was playing on the left.
Yes, he was.
He got skinned on this one.
Yeah, by Zinkernakel.
Yeah. So allowing that cross, and the cross, I mean, first of all, a cross like that, you'd hope that Utvik or Takioka would be able to get it. But that was Laborda's man.
Yeah. And then Utvik has never been a pacey guy in the first place. So he just gets skinned by Seifers. And then, yeah, Takolka probably really should have had gotten a touch on it a few seconds later. And Whitecaps, credit to them, they got back into the game despite some really poor passes. And you could easily tell that this was a depleted squad. And
they were starting a player who was just signed to a short-term contract from Whitecaps too. I mean, we've had that before where they're on the bench, but to start?
More on that later. Yeah, I don't think that's happened. More on that later. But Daniel Rios, he gets his first goal as a Whitecap. Really nice play by Jaden Nelson just to leave it for him. And then great finish, too, off the post and in past Chris Brady. And that's what the Whitecaps signed him for, just to be that relief for Brian White. Goal of the week candidate. And that's 5 assists for Jaden Nelson this season.
Well, we were already talking about, I think this is Jaden Nelson's best professional year ever.
Yeah, by a long shot, and it's still March.
Yeah.
Month.
You know what? Just keep adding to it.
Yeah, no doubt that he can or he will. And, yeah, we mentioned Lee McKenzie, 18-year-old midfielder, but he had played as a right wing. Like you mentioned, we've never seen a call-up from WFC2 get a start. We've seen them come off the bench.
Yeah.
But given the depleted roster, Jesper Sorensen decided to start McKenzie. Emmanuel Sabi was on the bench to start this game, but it made sense that they, wanted to ease him in instead of rushing him. And I was thinking that they'd play someone like a JC and Kondo up on the wing. So it was interesting to see Liam McKenzie get the start, but he did not look out of place at all. Looked good. Made some good passes, looked threatening on the right side. And then there's that one moment in the first half where Chris Brady lunges out for the ball, but he runs into McKenzie, and somehow McKenzie got up like nothing happened, like 5 seconds later or less than.
Good on him.
Yeah, we were thinking, oh, God. I hope that's not a serious injury. Gets up like 3 seconds later.
Yeah. That's the one. I think I saw that too. It was the goalkeeper's knee connected with his head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was asked about it after the game. He said, "Yeah, I don't remember what happened, but it was kind of a awkward, scary play, but no biggie."
Do you remember years ago? And I'm trying to remember the player's name. We had a player on the Whitecaps who was a Japanese player chasing into the ball, and the goalkeeper from the other team grabbed the ball, and his head went into his forearm, and he ended up breaking his jaw. I mean, the goalkeeper right away was like, "Get someone for this guy." It gave me flashbacks of that where no one's at fault. It's just a horrible accident, right?
Japan Kudo.
Thank you.
May he rest in peace, as he died a couple years ago.
He did, yes.
And that was also against Chicago, believe it or not. I had flashbacks to that too. But McKenzie just got up pretty much right away, which is still astonishing.
Good on him.
That is
that's a dangerous one.
He's one tough kid.
Yeah.
And second half, I mean, the Whitecaps, to their credit, did look dangerous, but Chicago were even more dangerous on their transitions. And Philip Zinkernackle again. This guy, I believe, his first 2 goal contributions with Chicago. It all starts with Ocampo slipping in the midfield, around midfield, and then Chicago was back the other way. Ralph Priso really should have done better on this clearance. He just kicked it out instead of trying to handle it. And then Zinkernackle just taps it in past Takolka.
Yeah.
I mean, Priso. I was talking about this with Alex Gonge, Ruzik, and Sam Rowan after the game. He's a fine player, but he needs someone like Pedro Vite and Andres Cubas to hold the fort with him. Because if he does it all on his own, he struggles.
That's fair.
Yeah,
he's good at pace when dishing out the ball and receiving. Like, he's good at 1-2s and then finding the open space, getting around men that way. If he has to take them on 1v1.
Yeah, because Cubas and Vite being on international, they aren't there to cover for him.
That's true.
So, yeah, pretty rough game for Priso, but the Whitecaps kept pushing, to their credit. And then Emmanuel Sabi comes off the bench.
Finally, we get to see him.
He looked dangerous. And This is the guy that could start as soon as this week in Toronto. Because he had a couple of good chances, including one that was saved by Chris Brady, which totally should have been a corner, by the way. I don't know how the ref didn't see that, because it literally went off Chris Brady's hand and out for a corner. But the referee called it a goal kick.
Yeah.
I still don't understand that decision. And then there was another one where Sabi was in on alone, but he skied it over the bar, and he was offside anyway, but still a good chance. So, yeah,
he's going to be rusty a little bit too, right? I mean, he's just back into training. He's only getting up a few match minutes to get match fitness. But I think there's enough of him that we can be excited of, a new piece, right? It feels like a new signing, or only a couple of months into the season.
Well, he technically is a new signing.
But now, right?
Now just was like 25 minutes off the bench, 30. Like, this guy looked dangerous. This guy can do something with his team, given the way he moves the ball, the way he has some pace to him, and that he likes to shoot as well, because he was trying to shoot. So good to see Emmanuel Sabi actually play for the Whitecaps. But unfortunately, they couldn't tie the game, and then Chicago scores a third, which is also on a counterattack. And Chicago, 3 straight wins, all away from Chicago. Very impressive.
You know what? There's a lot to be happy about in Chicago right now. I know there was a lot of hesitation when Greg Berhalter got the job. He's got them playing. There's the talks, and I think there's also renderings now of a possible brand new stadium, so they don't have to play in that dismal Soldier Field. Yeah, you know what? I think if you're a Fire fan right now, there's a lot to be happy about this early in the season.
Yeah, and let's not forget Greg Berhalter. How did he get the U.S. job? From doing well in MLS with Columbus.
Yep.
So this
And
guy's a proven MLS manager.
take a look at his record with the American team. His record with the American team wasn't bad. It
Yeah,
wasn't exciting, but it wasn't bad.
and it just ended poorly.
Yeah.
Like Chicago is
Although they
a
haven't picked up, they've kind of picked up from where they ended, so it's not looking too good right
yeah
now either. We'll talk about it.
more of that later. So Chicago looks like a dark horse team out east, and they look really good defensively against the Whitecaps, especially in the box where they were just crammed and prevented the Whitecaps from getting headers, getting decent chances on Chris Brady. I think they only had like one shot on target on Brady in the first half, and that was the goal.
Yeah.
So credit to Chicago for the way they played and how good they looked on transitions, especially Phillips Zinkernackle. I mean, that's a name to watch, along with Hugo Cyphers.
Mm-hmm.
And given the fact they had call-ups injuries too, another impressive win for them. But for Vancouver, again, not bad, not like horrible, but
For the schedule they had, for the players that they had missing, if you're going to lose a game, this is the one to lose.
exactly.
I mean, you want to go into every game with a plan to figure out how to win, how to overcome your deficiencies. But that's now done. You've now had 2 weeks where you're only playing one day a week.
Yep.
You've got your players coming back. Now you can kind of pick up to where you were. If you remember how you did it, get back to that point.
Yeah, that's what Jesper Sorensen talked about in the post-match. He said they didn't play the game they wanted to play against Chicago. They didn't look sharp. They didn't look crisp and
That's
all
fair.
that.
Yeah.
And I think giving up that goal like a minute into the game really threw the Whitecaps off their game plan. Because up until that game, in MLS play, they have not conceded first. It was usually them scoring early.
I think anytime you give up a goal that early, doesn't matter who you are, if you're chasing the game after the first minute, that does something to your confidence.
Yeah, and that gave Chicago confidence, and that's why they stuck to their game plan.
Yeah.
And just all around, great performance by Chicago, but this felt like, one of those scheduled losses, quote unquote. Because let's face it, no team is going to go perfect, have a perfect record. It's unrealistic to think that the streak would have lasted forever. It was going to end eventually, and given the circumstances, last weekend was no surprise that it ended that way. And obviously, it's tough to lose by that score. Yes, we talked about it, but he basically said, "Yeah, I mean, everyone's disappointed, but we move forward." Because
I don't think you can begrudge anyone on this team. Yeah, there's going to be players that had poor games. You talked about Ralph Priso and whatnot, but it just a confluence of all these things that are happening at the same time. Okay, it happens. Like Sorensen said, you move to the next.
Yeah, and Whitecaps are still top of the Western Conference, and
They're still tied for top of the league with Philly.
Yeah, and Philly, I believe they won their game.
They did. I think they have the exact same records right now: four wins, 1 loss, 0 draws.
Yeah. So it's not if you think the sky is falling after 1 loss, I don't. You need to give your head a shake. You need to get checked out.
Yeah, exactly.
And I hope there's no one out there like this. Not that I've seen, but you never know in sports fandom. People tend to overreact to things, but all good things come to an end.
Yeah, but speaking of the sky falling, let's take a look at who the Whitecaps are going to be playing on Saturday. Because Toronto FC have had an absolute horror show of the beginning to their season.
You know that meme where it says our expectations were low, but holy F? That's Toronto FC right now.
Toronto FC is tied for dead last in the league. Obviously, they've got some company with New England, Montreal. And in the Western Conference with Sporting KC. But there is nothing in Toronto that has looked good.
Yeah.
And they still have that anchor. They still have that Italian anchor.
Yeah, that $15 million anchor who actually made his debut last week.
Oh, wow. They decided to give him some time.
Yeah, because apparently they're also dealing with injuries. But Toronto, once they tied the game against New York Red Bulls, that is, they gave it up.
Yeah.
I didn't see much of this game. I watched a little bit in the press box before the Whitecaps game. Yeah, New York, better team. Toronto, to their credit, did look okay, but New York came out on top. And yeah, Toronto still have not won a game this season. And
No,
if
they
you're a
only have
Toronto,
the one draw against DC. That's it.
yeah, and they're just struggling to score, struggling to defend. Just things aren't going well in
When I
Toronto.
look at these two teams, when I look at playing Toronto, and I take a look at what the Whitecaps did earlier this season against CF Montreal, on paper, I believe CF Montreal is a better team. They have the exact same record. They're both horrible, but I believe on paper, CF Montreal is the one more likely to get out of this. We'll talk about them a little bit later too. So I think that this is the perfect game for the Whitecaps to rebound in. You're playing Toronto. Yeah, it's in Toronto, but who cares? When they're playing like this, take the game to them. Make that stadium your own.
Yeah, and get back to the game plan. Get back to what worked. No perfect time to do it, and you're getting reinforcements. International call-ups are coming back, and Emmanuel Sabi is healthy.
Yep.
Hopefully he gets to start. I like him too.
Might be early for him to start, but if you could get him 45 minutes,
maybe
half an hour, you know what? I'd take it.
But given the way he looked coming off the bench against Chicago, he did not look out of place.
Well, that's very good to hear.
Yeah. So just Toronto FC, I mean, things have not been the same since, the Altidore Giovinco days. And the Lorenzo Insigne signing was an absolute failure, rather. And they're trying to get rid of this guy, but then they had to play him after a few weeks of him just being on the bench or being scratched, what you want to call it.
Yeah, is there a version of a healthy scratch in soccer?
Yeah, I guess you can call him that.
Yeah. But I mean, there's nothing. This has got to go down as one of the worst
DP signings
ever
in MLS. Yeah.
But you wouldn't have thought that in the first year. I mean, yeah, he didn't, blow any bridges up, but I don't know.
Yeah, and
everything that's gone on since, it's not looked good.
I remember, people were saying in 2023, oh, TFC are back. They got the Italians now, and they got a legit goalkeeper in Sean Johnson. And that guy just fell off ever since he came to Toronto.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, you got no one in front of you. I mean, you can only keep out so much, but yeah, he hasn't made himself look good either.
Yeah, and it just, all around, just looking at their team, it's just not, exciting. It's not, there's no needle movers other than Bernardeschi, and I guess you could say when he's healthy, Richie Larea, but he's been injured for the past few weeks.
Yes, that's true too.
Why he missed the call up with Canada for the Nations League.
Yeah,
and you could also argue Jonathan Osorio as well, but he's not. He's like 30 now.
He's over 30 now, isn't he? Like 30.
I believe he's over 30. Yeah. So
I mean, a great testament to that team, right? I mean, he's the guy you build the statue to, right? But
it's just sure they have a new coach.
I was going to ask you about that. What do you think of Fraser?
I've never really rated him, to be honest.
You know what? The more I look at this, the more I'm wondering is, did you sign him as your head coach because he had been in your organization before as an assistant?
That's looking what
because I don't think when they signed, he was not the best coach that was available in all the coaches that were available at that time.
And there were much better options at that time.
Yeah. I feel like this is just going back to what you think you know, and it just being more of the same. Of course, it's because it's what you've already done before. They're not trying to get out of where they are right now.
Yeah, and you could blame the coach, but then there's the people up top from the GM
Way more problems than that, yeah. And
and Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment.
They've gone through a big change in who is running the organization over the last few years within was it MLS, right?
Yeah, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and I don't know if you would really call their whole transition of like a rebuild because they didn't really. I mean, sure, they signed a bunch of new players, but did they really let go of the old guard? Like Jonathan Osorio is still around. Because remember, there were talks of him leaving.
There were. I know they were trying to give him the opportunity to kick tires in Europe, but I think at his age, no one in Europe was even really looking for him. That time had passed him by.
Yeah, felt that way. And he's a loyal guy, too. So I can't really blame the guy. But for Vancouver Whitecaps...
He's Russell Seibert.
Yeah. But at least, at least Osorio has progressed the ball at the field.
Yeah, that's true, too.
But Vancouver has a great opportunity to get back to winning ways. I mean, home teams are always favored in MLS, but on paper, Vancouver is by far the better team, even without Reingold.
With everyone coming back, all these different players from international duty, your favorite has to be Vancouver. I don't care about the whole home field advantage. It has to be Vancouver.
Yeah. And no excuse but not get 3 points here for the Whitecaps.
100% agree.
So, yeah, they have a week to recover from the loss against Chicago. Players are coming back, and sure, it's a long trip, but they have the better squad. They're the best team in Canada, and simple. Just get back to what worked before the Chicago game, and try to take Toronto out of the game as much as possible and as early as possible.
Not the only news when it comes to the Whitecaps. There was a kind of a strange piece of business earlier on. Whitecaps acquired 150,000 K in GAM from Inter Miami in exchange for the discovery rights to Alan Obando, an 18-year-old Ecuadorian player who was playing in the Ecuadorian First Division for the Barcelona Sporting Club. He is now, since, as of yesterday, signed with Inter Miami on loan for the season with an option to buy.
Yeah, so I believe this is also the first time the Whitecaps discovered a player.
Yeah.
Really,
discovery rights. Did a lot of work to discover him, didn't we?
Discovery rights is just a dumb thing in this crazy league, but
it is the number one thing that needs to be trashed.
And and 100K in GAM is quite a lot, and
it's 100K this year and 50K next year. I know it's split over 2 years.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, like, is the signing imminent? We have less than a month to go to the transfer.
I mean, it does give the Whitecaps more flexibility. They actually have quite a bit of GAM available compared to other teams. This one, I think, is more initiated by Miami because Miami went out and then signed the player, right? And this gives them number 9 depth behind Luis Suarez. 18-year-old kid, they can gauge him on loan, decide whether or not they want to go further on. So it's actually a cheap deal for them. But we know Axel Schuster has said he wants 2 more signings. So I don't know. I think the clock is running out. I don't know if he gets 2, but if he can get 1, it's still something.
I believe he did say 1 starter, 1 U22.
He did.
I would believe that he'd probably get the U22 in this window and then the starter in the summer.
I'm trying to think. This window ends at the end of April, so he's got just under a month, April 23rd. But you also got to take a look at where he's going to be looking at players to sign. And those leagues have windows that are closed. So do they want to lose a player knowing they can't sign anyone?
Yeah,
right?
unless
it's more difficult for him to work right now.
It would be very tough, I think, to get someone starting quality in this window with the time left. Yeah, especially if it's in Europe.
Sure, you can find someone. You can probably do that, but
you can get a U22 guy.
It's tough.
I mean, he did it a few years ago to Andres Kubis, but it took him over a month because of visas and all that. So
maybe you can do it again. Kubis is one of the better signings.
Yeah, and We'll see what Schuster can do to add to this squad to make it even better. But
Yeah.
there have been rumors that Pedro Vite has agreed to a 3 million euro deal with a Greek club, I believe Panathinaikos.
Yeah, but
But
Manuel Vick
Manuel,
of Transfer
oh,
Market is saying that's not true. Um, my I suspect that we're not. This is not the first thing that we're going to hear Pedro Vite this year because his deal is done at the end of this year.
yeah,
I know the Whitecaps are going to want to re-sign him, but this is a guy that we have seen a number of times actually being linked to clubs in Belgium, Netherlands, a few other places, especially like that kind of caliber. To be linked to a club like Panathinaikos in Greece, huge club in Greece, huge, one of the biggest.
yeah. And I mean, where the writing is on the walls, the Whitecaps want a lot for this guy, and 3 million euros does seem underwhelming.
I
If it,
think it's 3 million right now because he's got less than a year on his deal.
yeah, but it looks like the Whitecaps want more, which it seems. My guess is why the deal isn't close to being done.
Well, then you got to re-sign him. You got to re-sign him and then decide if you want to keep him and sell him. Because right now you're not going to get more for him, especially since he would be able to sign on a free in
Anywhere,
2-3 months.
yeah. And I mean, if the Whitecaps want to cash in on Vite, I guess they might as well take what they can get. But I'm sure there'll be more people looking to more teams rather looking to buy Vite.
Especially with
And
how well he's done to begin the season.
yeah, and I believe he when on international duty looked like he did well there with Ecuador.
He's one of the big guys you always call for the Ecuadorian national team, right? He is always called now.
Yeah, and I read somewhere, I believe it's the Ecuadorian coach who said, "Yeah, Pedro needs to leave MLS for the better of his career."
None of that is wrong. None of that is wrong, but I really want to keep him.
Yeah, it would be so nice for him to stay until the end of the season, but it just feels like that the writing is on the wall that he'll leave in the summer, and then the Whitecaps will bring that starting midfielder Schuster wants to replace him.
That's, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of sense in how you say that, actually.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll see where this goes. But Whitecaps, next on the agenda is Toronto FC this weekend. Note the start time; it's like 11:30 our
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
So really early game. You can spend your lunchtime, your brunch watching it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to the Nations League, CONCACAF Nations League. Pretty disappointing for Canada, but third place is better than nothing.
It sucks because of how they played in that first game. That first game was just
It was just an awful.
that game against Mexico was the honeymoon with marshes over.
Yeah, that was just an off night for everybody.
Yeah.
Like the Whitecaps against the Fire, they just couldn't recover from giving up the first goal because like a minute or two in, Raul Jimenez takes advantage of some poor defending. He just gets by Bombito and Cornelius and beats Dane Sinclair. And since then, Canada couldn't generate anything creatively. Like there was no creation in the final third, not even in the midfield. And they only had one shot on target against Mexico, and that was Alfonso Davies' free kick that went right to the goalkeeper.
Yeah. Out of 11
That's
attempts,
it.
right? Like
That's
you're only
it.
hitting the net once out of 11 attempts. I mean,
And it's on a set piece.
yeah, and
Terrible.
Yeah.
And again, Davies with the whole hero ball. I want to do everything myself. It's just not fun to watch. We saw that against Mexico.
That is a very, very. I get the added responsibility of wearing the captaincy, of him feeling like he has to do everything, but he has to rely on his team, and he has to realize that his team is not Bayern Munich.
Yeah, people often don't realize Canada Davies is very different from Bayern Munich Davies.
Yeah.
And when it just looks so frustrating when he tries to do everything himself, and like he forgets that he has a team around him You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That he can, like he doesn't have Harry Kane up front with Canada. He needs to use Jonathan David.
Yeah. Which,
But yeah,
I gotta be honest, not a bad alternative.
By the way, Jonathan David was invisible against Mexico.
Yeah.
And so was Kyle Aaron.
You can answer this better than I can, because I wasn't only able to watch highlights. Was he invisible because he wasn't able to do anything, or was he invisible because he didn't have service?
It was a bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, I can't remember one good instance where he touched the ball.
Yeah, that's...
And you could also argue that there was a missed penalty. This should have been a penalty, actually. Mexican player literally kicks Cornelius.
Yes.
And then no penalty, VAR, no penalty. Which is just outrageous, but classic CONCACAF. But it doesn't help that the white Canada, they just couldn't generate anything offensively. Like the wings just were trying to do the same thing over and over again. I mean, Ali Ahmed looked dangerous, but he was providing service, but no one was there.
He was really the only one that was, though, which is a credit to him.
And just disappointing from like Steven Estacchio. Like that's not the Steven Estacchio we know.
No, I mean, Steven Estacchio is the guy who should be the engine of this club, or of this national team.
Yeah, and he and Kone just were getting drenched in the midfield, and they weren't creating anything.
Yeah,
it didn't help that Mexico looked so good on the counterattack, and Canada's defense looked shaky. Because heading into the game, I was researching, and I did in my preview that Mexico were going to be a transition side, and we're going to lock down Canada, and that's what they did. They couldn't adapt to Mexico just locking them down.
Fair enough.
And full credit to them. And then Raul Jimenez, player of the whole tournament.
Yeah.
Banger of a free kick past Dane Sinclair. You just have to applaud that. Because, wow. And this guy's like, what, 32, 33 years old, and he's still balling.
Yeah.
Unk still got it. Not just with Mexico, but with Fulham.
Mm-hmm.
But off night for everyone against Mexico. Very disappointing performance all around. So Canada got to play the U.S., but not in the circumstance of the game they wanted. For a third place match, and it was a very uneventful start, other than Alphonso Davies getting injured, had to come off, and it's just come out yesterday that he has torn his ACL, and his agent has blamed Team Canada and Jesse Marsh, and said Davies was not supposed to start in third place match, but Marsh convinced him to.
Yeah, the agent has come out saying that Davies wasn't 100% going into that game, that he was, I don't know if it was partially injured or tired or whatever it is, and that he was to start on the bench, convinced by the coach, pressured by the coach. I mean, depends on the language this agent is using. I get an agent wanting to protect his client, but if you're a player, your job is to play. Now, if he was injured, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's absolutely a problem. You got to wonder why are you playing an injured player? You gotta take care of these players. But I think it's too early for me to say I believe him. As bad as that sounds, yeah. I do wonder if this is just an agent protecting his client, and maybe that's
agents
pragmatist in me.
Agents are always like this. They have to protect their clients. They don't really have a choice.
The other thing I think of is Davies has some injury history,
especially in the last year.
Yeah. So is this just a re-aggravation? I'd have to take a look at his injury history. I mean, I know some of it was sickness because there was COVID involved in that as well, but actual physical injury is something that he has had to deal with throughout his career, and some pretty significant ones.
Yep.
The one thing I think that what sucks is he is now out for the rest of the season with Bayern Munich.
Yep.
He is out for the Gold Cup.
Well, he wasn't going to play anyway, since Gold Cup is...
He's
MLS
also going to
players.
be out, but the thing is he's going to be out for a significant portion of any of those games that are now going to be leading into the
The
World
World
Cup,
Cup. Yep.
right?
6 months,
And
that's
wanting
what
to
they're saying.
play and play and play with your team, your national side, which you don't get to play with a lot, in order to lock in what you are, what your identity is, how you fit in. So we don't get Davies putting the world on his back sort of player, and that he understands his role. We're not going to get that right now.
Yeah, you're not going to have the face of your national team.
Yeah.
Well, play for the next 6 months. That's for others to step up. Hopefully, Sam Adekugbe can get healthy because that's his spot now.
Adekugbe is back in training,
which is good.
Yes. So,
but the game, full credit to Alistair Johnston, who had a really rough game against Mexico and was very lucky not to get sent off. He has never played the left side in his entire life.
Yeah.
But he looked great against the US. And Nico Segur also came in. Other than a mistake on the US goal, phenomenal game from him.
You know what? Early shakiness, but to come in and to play the minutes that he did when he hasn't, I mean, he's been there to kind of get capped and cap tied, but now contribute significant minutes is great.
Yeah, and Canada actually got on the score sheet first. Ali Ahmed carries the ball in the box, finds Jonathan David, it's blocked, and Minnesota United's Tani Alawose taps it in. No way he was going to miss from there. First goal for Canada.
Good for him.
Yeah, and then, as I mentioned, Aguimayang gets the U.S. on the board. He just gets around Segur and Buchanan. No one was marking Luna and Aguimayang. Sorry, it was McKennie who got around Segur. And then St. Clair probably should have got a hand on it. Aguimayang beats the Minnesota United goalkeeper. But to Canada's credit, they kept pushing in the second half. But it wasn't till after Jesse Marsh was not happy with the referee for two apparent missed penalties on Jonathan David, and I don't think they were penalties at all.
They weren't.
David kind of sold both of them, especially the second one.
Yep.
He just fell, but Marsh, he didn't see it that way. He was angry. He was yelling, and the ref had enough of him and sent him to the stands.
I do not blame the referee on this. Don't get me wrong, I love the passion, but you're going to do something like this. First off, I don't know what was said. So if something was said that crossed over
I think
line,
something was said.
Yeah. But you got to be right. With the number of cameras that are in stadiums, you have pads right in front of you. You're watching this stuff in real time. You better be right. And he wasn't.
And I think it was a bit much. It was a lot from Jesse Marsh. It was way too much.
Now, I wonder if what happened in the game against Mexico, against Cornelius, played into this.
I'm really sure it did.
Yeah.
And I don't blame Marsh for having it with the CONCACAF refs, but the way he lost it against Mexico, I mean, not against the U.S., was too much. He got the emotions, got the better of him. He really needed to calm down there, and as a result, got sent to the stands. And then there were cameras following him in the lobby of SoFi Stadium.
Yeah.
The only words that were able to come out from him were, "It's impossible to understand." So
you know what? I will say this: he's very lucky Canada won, and it's mainly because he is an American coach in Canada playing the United States. Because he wouldn't have been able to live down everything that would have been written about him or talked about him afterwards.
He would have been clowned upon.
Yes,
he would have been memed.
Yeah, he should be thanking every player on his team for bailing him out.
Yeah, and to their credit, Canada were the better side.
Yeah.
I believe the U.S. chance for like 70 minutes, the goal, that was their best chance of the game for 70 minutes.
Yeah.
70, 80 minutes.
Now, one of the things that's really funny about the outcome of this game was Mauricio Pochettino, who coaches the men's team for the United States right now. You know, they lost a tournament. So now, like, people are saying, like, oh, is he the guy? Is he the guy? Now, he's already committed until after the World Cup. He wants to be there. But he did mention at one point that he does want a second stint with Tottenham Hotspur. So now a lot of people are saying, oh, is that coming? Is that coming? And he actually had to start quelling a few rumors that he kind of inadvertently made himself to say, no, I'm here until after the World Cup. Nothing's going on right now. But I thought that was kind of funny, that something out of his own mouth probably wasn't the smartest thing to say.
Yeah, and remember what he said before the Nations League? We're focused on the World Cup. We got the support of President Trump. Funny. You know, like last year with Chelsea, he said he wanted to win everything. They didn't. Karma at it again for Poch. The career bottler, as I like to call him. Bottles again. But credit to Canada.
He has won stuff, but he's a great coach if you've got a young team.
The U.S. isn't as a young team anymore.
No, they're not.
They're in their mid-20s, the average age, I believe.
Yeah.
They have a few young guys, though.
Yeah.
But for Canada, Jonathan David awoke in a big way. I mean, he was dangerous all game, but this is what we want to see from him with Canada. The confidence to shoot like that. He just blasted it past Matt Turner.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, where is this Jonathan David with Canada? We've seen this with Lille. We need to see it more with Canada. Just shoot it.
Yep. No, I agree. You know,
and Ali Ahmed evolved in another goal. He actually got the assist here. So credit to Ali Ahmed, and I have to applaud Jesse Marsh for the gamble to play Chouanier and Kone instead of Eustachio. They look good together.
Good here.
And like for the most part, they prevented the U.S. from transitioning, from generating anything. Because the U.S. really didn't look threatening until like the final 5-10 minutes. And Brian White came on for the U.S., which was nice to see. But he didn't help that much. Well, he had that one chance where he flubbed with his first touch. But wasn't enough for the U.S., and Canada finished third, which, again, is better than nothing. Disappointed to not get the trophy, but it is what it is. We'll take it.
I think there's a little bit of irony in before the semifinal game even had begun, everyone was talking about a Canada-US final. Everyone was talking about that, not realizing they had a game to play to get there, and neither team makes it. There's a bit of humor in that.
And people think, the Canada-U.S. Nations League final will be like the Four Nations face-off final, where detention and everything. Maybe the players will start fighting.
Everyone thought, there's going to be the 3 red cards in the first 9 seconds, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, a third-place match doesn't live up to the hype, even though it's Canada-U.S., but...
Not only that, but this was a winnable tournament. It would have been Canada's first
trophy since
2001. It's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, that's the big takeaway. Just a missed opportunity to get some silverware to prove that they're the best in CONCACAF. Mexico, so credit to them, beat Panama in the final. Last-minute penalty from Raul Jimenez, who also had 2 goals.
He had all 4 goals in these two games.
So, player of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
By far. But disappointing for Canada. But my big takeaway from this tournament is when things are going poorly, like when Canada's facing adversity, they don't have a plan B. We saw that against Mexico. Because when things are going well, Jesse Marsh's Canada looked great to watch. We saw it.
Very organized side.
Yeah, we saw it in Copa America. We saw it in the friendlies against Suriname in the fall. But when their backs are against the wall, they don't know how to get out of it. That's my big takeaway. So
there are times when Canada plays with too much emotion, and I do wonder if that comes from Marsh. Because the thing is, they've played some very difficult opponents before. Think of like when they were playing a lot of like the big European clubs when Marsh very first started. They didn't necessarily win, but they looked like they were in the game. The game against Mexico was different, and I wonder if it was the emotion of the possibility of getting something that got to them, and I wonder if that comes from Marsh, especially with him getting kicked out of that game. Right? You as players, you feed off that from your coach.
Yeah, like going forward, like what can Canada do? What do they need to do to get back into a game that's
They need to learn how to
they're facing
reset.
adversity? They need to learn how to reset. They need to learn how to face adversity. And this is a team that's faced adversity many times before, even before Jesse Marsh came. But under this coach, we're close to the 1 year anniversary of his appointment.
Wow,
How are they gonna adjust to games under him?
Yeah, I still like Marsh, and I think my hope is that even Marsh would admit that he needs to evolve and grow as well.
He's the type of guy to admit that.
He absolutely is. So I have no problem with him. I see this as a growing experience, not only for the team, but for him as well.
Yeah, a learning experience is a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Disappointing, but we learn from this.
I want to throw out a question here because in watching these two games, one other thing stood out for me. Is Dane St. Clair Canada's number one now?
It's tough given he should have had the U.S. goal.
Yeah.
I can't really blame him for the Mexico goals, like especially that free kick. Who's stopping that?
But the fact that he played both these games with Crépeau on the bench, with Crépeau and Portland not really wowing anyone right now, and
I think right now
being younger and only still going to get better as he gets into his prime. Is he Canada's number one? Like, did Borjan almost stay around too long that Crépeau just kind of gets passed by?
I think right now, yes, especially on form. I think that's why Marsh picked him, Minnesota United form. St. Clair's younger and obviously having the better season. So I think going forward, I think the goal for the World Cup is to have St. Clair as the number one.
Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to have two capable goalkeepers, but as much as I feel bad a little bit for Crépeau, I feel like just his window was just at a weird time. I think you go right now with Dane St. Clair.
Yeah, I think you go with him in the Gold Cup.
Yeah.
Because
let him prove to you in the Gold Cup that he is your guy.
Because Crépeau has proved in the past he can be the guy. Now we need St. Clair to do that.
Yep, absolutely.
It's a good headache to have. You got a 1A and a 1B.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. That's fair. All right, MLS news. We have our first coaching sacking of the season.
Remember how I said a few weeks ago that Laurent Courtois was on the hot seat? I don't think I expected him to get the boot this early. I mean, especially given the circumstances that Montreal have not played a game at home.
Yes.
This year, which is strange. I don't know what's the deal with their stadium.
There's construction going there, isn't there?
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
I think it's to do with construction.
Yeah, they do not play at home until April 12th.
Yeah.
So Montreal have not won a game this season, as mentioned. 0-1-4, same record as Toronto FC, just a lower goal differential. They're not looking creative. They're not looking exciting.
It's a lower goal differential, but it's also from the fact that they can't score goals. They have 2 goals in 5 games.
Yeah, they can't score. At times they can't defend. And player development, which is Montreal is famous for, has stalled. And so Laurent Courtois gets the boot.
Is he the problem, though?
Yeah, we'll talk about that right now. Yeah. So I'm going to bring it up here.
Because, I would ask anyone who has a question about this, take a look at Josh's article that he wrote.
Yes.
How you break it down, especially when you take a look at the money spent by the Saputos in this team, you're starting to see a pattern as to why they are where they are right now.
Let me look at the amount of coaches and look at the names.
I know
that are on this list. 10 head coaches and 14 MLS seasons with CF Montreal, and some big names: Thierry Henry, Jesse Marsh, Wilfred Nancy. So, look at this. No coach has lasted more than 2 seasons.
Yeah.
The Biello was an interim, but he only lasted 1 full season and was canned like midway through 2017.
And he's with Canada now.
Yeah, as an assistant.
Yeah.
So, if you got these big names like leaving, like Marsh left because of disagreements, and so did Wilfred Nancy.
Yeah.
Like he had a huge bust up with Joey Saputo.
Yeah.
So as much as there's blame for Laurent Courtois, he was being set up to fail because Montreal had the lowest payroll among all MLS teams last year. And Tom Bolger brought this up too. I'm going to try and find it.
This is
Look,
the one that surprised me. If you're bringing up what I think you're bringing up, this is the one that surprised me.
I am bringing up what you think I am bringing up. Look at this DP list.
Yes.
Other than like the big names, Drogba and Piatti, nothing really wows me.
Victor Wanyama, even when he was in Spurs, he was like the poor man's Moussa Dembele. Like the Moussa Dembele that played for Spurs at the time, like the midfield beast. And that's not Wanyama. He's not a physically strong guy.
Yeah, and Drogba and Piatti were big successes. And how come they didn't replicate that? Joey Saputo.
But the one that really got me was showing how much money they have spent on DP transfers and how it dropped to nothing since what was it, like 2014?
Yeah, $0.
Yeah. We're talking 11 years and you've spent $0 on transfer fees for DPs. I'm sorry, DPs are players you're going to spend money on a DP. That's just the way it is. It's a designated player.
Sure, you can get a guy for free, but
in 11 years
is crazy.
It defies logic.
Like, how are you supposed to be a good team when you don't spend the money on a DP? Because DPs are your difference maker. Look at Ryan Gauld. Look at Andres Gubis.
Yeah.
Why can't spend big bucks on those guys? Look how they turned out.
And look at the research they do on those players and the work they do to sign those. Ryan Gauld, that was a year in the making from when they first started working on him. Kubis took a long time to get him over here, right? Like these are guys where they identified the recruitment and the scouting are two of the best things that have happened in the Schuster era.
Yeah. The
Montreal,
Whitecaps,
I don't know what they're doing. They're putting names on a dartboard and then throwing in the opposite direction.
Montreal reminds me of the pre-Schuster Whitecaps, but even worse.
Yes. And you have to wonder. I mean, don't get me wrong. This used to be the team the Saputos cared about. It's not the team the Saputos care about anymore.
So, and it's also a huge
Bologna, right? That's the other
red
team
flag that Saputo is having beef with coaches and causing them to leave.
Yeah. Well, there's been stories about him storming into the players' room and yelling at people. Right?
Yep. So
your owner.
It's a huge, huge, huge red flag. And the fact that he's willing to open the pocketbooks to make this team good, like their best year was 2022 under Wilfred Nancy, and many players left, and so did Nancy. They haven't reached that height since. Two coaches since 2022. I guess three now with the interim.
Yeah.
So if you aren't caring, sell the team. And also, the coaching job in Montreal does not look appealing right now.
It does not, which is why they're going with an interim, because I don't know if they have anyone in the pipeline to sign.
Yeah, there's a leaf blower outside. I hate those things. I
will say that when I saw this happening, my first thought was, can you imagine if Vanni Sartini went there?
Vanni Sartini against Joey Saputo is a disaster.
Oh man,
I don't think Vanni will last 1 year there.
Legends.
Oh, Vanni would come out to the media and call Saputo names I wouldn't dare say here.
I would pay to be in those press conferences.
Given that we've spoke to Vanni, we've interacted him, I don't think he'd be a good fit there. Like on a footballing standpoint, sure, but cultural fit, no. And if I were Vanni, I'd be like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks.
The only reason I could see it is because the Saputos and the Italian connection with Bologna and wanting to play that system would allow Vanni to play what he wants to play, right? But
Right.
it would be such a contentious relationship, and I say contentious is a mild word to say in this. Like, it would be an absolute. Oh my god! It would not be good.
Yeah, he and Saputo would be having like fist fights in the locker room.
Yeah, right.
So, but for Montreal, with Saputo not willing to spend the pocketbook, the money, Laurent Courtois was set up to fail in some ways.
Yeah.
And so was Hernan Lozada in some ways as well. And unless things change, the new coach will be set up to fail too. So, if the real problem in the room in Montreal is Joey Saputo.
It is.
And he and the Earthquakes owner, John Fish or whatever his name is, two of the worst owners in MLS. So if you don't care, sell the team. All right, let's quickly go over to Europe since its international breakdown isn't too much.
No.
The big news out of Chelsea is many reports are saying will have to pay £5 million should they choose to send Jadon Sancho back to Man United. Remember, this is a loan obligation, not option, to buy for $25 million.
That's such a weird loan clause. I don't think I've heard of that before.
Oh, it's a common thing. A loan with an obligation to buy. That's how.
Oh, obligation to buy, but to send a player back after the loan is done and you have to pay for that.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Yeah.
And the Chelsea are still undecided because
what do they do? Take £5 million, shove it in Sancho's pocket, and say off you go.
Yeah,
give the check to your actual team.
Yeah, and given Sancho, like the rest of the team, hasn't been good since December. I don't think Sancho has had a goal contribution since that game against Tottenham in December. Because he just looked very frustrating. Keeps being, he's now like one of the whipping boys among Chelsea fans. Just like the Man United Sancho is back.
Yeah.
And it's just not a bad look if they do decide to send him back and pay £5 million for him, with him, to Man United. But there's still a chance for Sancho to turn things around and maybe make Chelsea think, okay, maybe we can keep this guy. But it's also been reported that Sancho, according to Bild, whatever the German outlet is called, he has told his agent he wants to go back to Dortmund.
Dortmund could use the help.
Yeah, and given Sancho's Dortmund history, why not? So it's either this for Sancho, perform or not.
Yep.
And given this guy's history with his attitude, I hope Maresca can straighten him out. So far, we haven't heard reports of him being lazy in training and all that. So I guess that's something. Or he hasn't been late, rather. Because I believe Maresca has put up fines for being late to training.
That's usually pretty common, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Spurs, what's this, £1,900 million for a 19-year-old target?
Yeah, they've been looking at Tyler Dibbling of Southampton for quite a while now. Again, Spurs have a very young midfield to begin with, but it looks like Yves Bissouma's time might be coming to an end with Spurs, and one of the guys they've been looking at is Dibbling. Again, they're not the only club looking at him, but the Southampton Spurs pipeline is one that's been established since like Gareth Bale. £100 million though. I think that's going to be
for a 19-year-old.
That's going to be steep for Levy. So I don't know what's going to happen. But I think there's going to be a bit of a summer battle over this player.
Don't tell Badada Bali about this player. That's what I'm saying.
He'll end up signing him to a 15-year deal with the pay structure that you need a master's in contract law to understand.
Yeah, but $100 million for a 19-year-old, I don't care how good he is a lot.
But the thing is, the transfer fees, especially in England, are so out of proportion.
Yeah, and I don't know much about this guy.
Like, I know people say that there's no England tax when it comes to players, but there is.
Yeah. English kid
Yeah, right.
too. So future England midfielder. And speaking of England players, I feel like the writing on the wall was on for like a year or two. So many outlets are reporting that Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to sign on a free with Real Madrid,
Yeah,
which and Liverpool fans are having a meltdown. In some ways, I can't blame the guy, given the fact that he's won a lot with Liverpool and he wants a new challenge.
yeah.
And Real
I
Madrid
think
need a right back, given especially now that Carvajal's been injured.
yeah.
I mean, who? I mean,
I get that player careers are short, and you've got to be selfish. You got to think about yourself if you're a player and where you're going to play and what you're going to do with that small window that you get. But I I don't like this. I think I wish Alexander Arnold would have chosen to fight with Liverpool than to coast with Real Madrid. If that
and
makes any sense.
and yeah, I also see that side too because local boy came through their academy,
Mm-hmm.
Liverpool born and bred. A lot of geezers say the problem with modern football is lack of loyalty,
Yeah.
and Trent had the opportunity for him to establish his name with the likes of Steven Gerrard.
Yeah.
But instead, he goes to
Could have been
Real
elected.
Madrid. He's going to go to Real Madrid and try to be part of a super team.
Like I'm of two minds of this one. Like I said, you have a short career. You got to do what's good for you. If this is what he decides is the best thing for him as an individual, go for it. I think for me also what plays into this is a little bit of my bias against Real Madrid. Any team,
Yeah. I mean,
any team but them.
Yeah, and Real Madrid are so, like with signing players on a free. They did this with Rudiger too, a few
I
years
know who
ago.
would have thought that.
And that still hurts me as a Chelsea fan, especially with Rudiger's arguably now one of the best in the world. But going forward for Liverpool, how are they going to replace Trent?
It's going to be for a right back. I
Can't
don't
really think of anyone.
know where they look right now. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it was a year ago, I would have said because there were the rumors of Pedro Porro. Him going different places, but he's even fallen down the pecking order at Spurs.
Yep.
So
and he hasn't been that great.
No, I don't know. I don't know where you look.
Yeah, and not only Alexander Arnold, there's the dangers of Virgil van Dijk leaving on a free and Mohamed Salah, both of them not signing new contracts.
Yeah.
So, imagine all three leave. That would be a disaster
for Liverpool. It would be a huge challenge for Liverpool's recruiting, for them to look at what do they have in their academy, and it would be a big challenge for Arne Slot because he came into this and he just kept the wheels going, right? It was seamless from Jurgen Klopp. But this is going to be that first real big challenge.
Yeah, especially now that Alexander Arnold is on his way to Madrid. And I also believe that Jude Bellingham convinced him to make this move because he and Bellingham are quite close.
I mean, that could very well be the case. That makes sense.
Yeah,
not the only change that could be coming for Real Madrid, though. Rumors abound again that Carlo Ancelotti is going to be leaving at the end of the season for Brazil. We've heard this before.
Yeah, and Brazil got kicked in the bum by Argentina 4-1.
Yeah, and Argentina without Messi, by the way.
Yeah, Enzo Fernandez had a good game.
Yeah.
There's rumors that Ancelotti might leave Real Madrid and seeking new challenge in Brazil. I mean,
Brazil wants someone because Dorival Jr., it just hasn't worked out with him. They are not looking like a team ready for the World Cup.
Even back at Copa, they did not look good at all.
No, this has been an enduring issue with Brazil. And this is not what Brazil wants. Like when it comes to football in Brazil, being at the very top is synonymous with them.
Yeah, Ancelotti has a contract until 2026, but his future is still in doubt.
I think Ancelotti at this stage in his career can write himself a check with any team, any nation, whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Right? Anyone is going to want Carlos Ancelotti.
Yeah, and Brazil would be a good, at this point in his career, he's won everything in Europe on the club stage. Why not take an international job?
I mean, it'd be interesting. I don't know if Brazil is exactly where he would want to go, but if you want the opportunity to actually win something on the international stage, you can't do much worse.
And you got to prove Ancelotti, proven winner.
Not only that, but he's got players that play for him at Real Madrid, like Vinicius Jr., right? Like he knows players.
Yeah.
Marquinhos.
It'll also be a good fit.
Yeah.
One last thing here. FIFA is under pressure to allow the Afghanistan women's team to play in official tournaments. FIFA says only teams recognized by countries' football federations are eligible, but as you know, the Taliban controls Afghanistan.
Yeah. So FIFA has always had this rule of saying, like, you have to be recognized by your national federation in order to play at official tournaments. Now, they also have the thing that you have to be a recognized territory, but we've fudged with those rules more than enough times already. Afghanistan doesn't have a national women's team because obviously if you're a country controlled by the Taliban, you tend to not think of women as people. This is one of those ones where I think you're going to have such outside. I mean, the Afghanistan national women's team is basically living abroad from Afghanistan anyway, right? Yep. You're going to have to overstep whatever your rules are because your rules in this case just don't make sense.
Yeah. So, fortunately, I mean, you said pretty much what I thought. So
I think
you can't really get.
Well, first off, FIFA is not going to change the rules. The only way they do is if other women's national sides pressure them by refusing to play at official tournaments, right? Do you know what this is? The only comparable I could think of, and it's kind of a bad and cheesy comparable, it's Rudy. It's the scene in Rudy when the players, are giving their jerseys to the coach of saying like they're not going to play unless Rudy is going to be on the team, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's not the greatest analogy. It's the only one that came to my head when I saw this story. But you're going to need pressure from outside on FIFA. And these teams are going to have to potentially face fines because of refusing to play. And you're going to have to say like, we're doing this because it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and fortunately, unless that happens, nothing will change.
Yeah, that's absolutely it.
So that'll conclude this week's episode. Hope you liked it. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. We're on Twitter, Blue Sky. It's all in the episode description. Check out the YouTube channel as well and our Writing for Everyone Sports Network, plus Instagram and all that. So, yeah, Whitecaps TFC this weekend. Hopefully the Whitecaps can get 3 points. They should, as we mentioned, and we'll cover all things soccer as things happen. Club football in Europe is back next week, and also the Canada women's team also plays next week and
Argentina,
the week after.
Back to
Argentina.
back. Yeah.
Here in BC. So, yeah, a lot of footy for us to cover over the next few weeks. So that'll conclude this week's episode. Peace out.
Take care.